Apparently live. This is Interzone. I'm doing this as kind of an experiment. With regards to live streaming, I see them very differently from my videos. So I have absolutely no care about being professional in any manner. Like with the Jacob Soccer streams, I do not care. I will be. This is separate from actual work. So I'm happy to swear. I'll be swearing and talking casually. I try to avoid swearing in videos, not for monetary reasons. I'm not fucking monetized, but for the reason of trying to keep it relatively professional. Anyway, while I wait for people to show up, if people show up, and any questions are welcome, I don't care. I might make fun of this book, Iron Gates, allegedly by FBI informant stool pigeon Sutter, who essentially was paid $78,000 for a relatively short period of time to entrap people. I have never read this book properly because, as somebody who likes good literature, and Satanism and other things, this is just pathetic. As soon as the baby on spears kind of bullshit. I've seen worse than that in real life, Sutter. When I was in South Asia, a woman came up to me because I was wearing a suit and I looked like I had money. In the street, she was living in a shanty town, an Islamic woman, and she was holding a baby. And she walked up to me. She couldn't speak English. She could only speak Urdu, and asked me essentially, for charity. But I noticed something. The baby was dead, at least 3 days dead. And so I actually didn't have any money on me. So all I had was fucking cigarettes. Oh, thank you, Anna and Noria. I appreciate that. But yeah, so I had these Saudi Arabian Marlboro Red cigarettes. So I offered her a fucking cigarette. Now, naturally, most Islamic women do not smoke. So it was a bizarre gesture, mostly because of you become numb to that shit. It's strange. You become very, very numb to that kind of stuff. It becomes so normal that it's mundane. And that's something most people don't understand these days. Same with violence and things like that. It just becomes mundane. If you're seeing or dealing with shit every fucking day, other than the adrenaline stuff like that, but with regards to there's that horrible video that's very famous of that Chinese child being run over multiple times. It became very famous. Thing is, people are going about how fucked up the Chinese are doing that. No. That shit happens all the fucking time in certain places, and then you become desensitized to that. So it's like, oh well, I have to go somewhere. There is no other way around this. The kid's dead anyway, so that's the attitude. It's not psychopathic. It's not. It is just apathy, absolute apathy, and an annoyance that you're probably going to get fucking blood to clean off on your car. But if you absolutely need to get somewhere, if you're working, things like that. So it's not as it's horrible in a Western context, but you actually go to these places. Very different when that kind of stuff is the norm. And it's the same attitude I've seen big time in places like in Central and South Asia in particular, because they have immense populations. And a lot of, especially in like places like India, a lot of the Hindus have a very apathetic worldview of that. I something in Hinduism I don't agree with. They have a very stay in your placeism attitude to things, which is a good way to keep the caste system going and their systems of control. Also, if you can't hear me well because I'm not using a headset microphone or anything, inform me if I am too quiet, because I don't fucking know. I don't know if I'm too quiet. But yeah, that fucking apathy. Is necessary. I mean, it's when you're taken out of those kind of environments that the problems can occur. But it takes a long time to actually be affected by it. And for the most part, you're not. For the most part. Oh yeah, good. The mic is working. So yeah, I have to. People who assume that I have very bad PTSD, which I have had, and I probably do. But the thing is, nothing affects me anymore. Nothing affects me. So I don't even see the point in trying to solve the problem. Hello. Oh, that's good. Thank you. Nice chaos magic. Peter J. Carroll. What's it called again? That symbol that you're using, Jessica, for chaos magic. The chaos star. That's it. Yeah, I've got a lot. I used to be really, really into chaos magic, and I still kind of am. But it's been a while since I've gone through, Libanal and Psychonaut and all the others. Hey, Guru, your fucking Fruitful Youth video was amazing. Why did you delete that shit, Guru? I wrote about it. It was fucking amazing, and congratulations on your initiation. Are you there, Guru? Oh, that's how I do it. Found your channel while looking through YouTube statistics and saw traffic from your website. So the channel, nice content. Thanks. With regard, why did you delete that video of Guru made an amazing video that, in the context of people who don't know much about the O9A, it will look very sinister. However, the video is not, well, by sinister, I'm using that in the mundane term, not in the O9A sinister tradition kind of mentality. But yeah, the Feud for Youth video explained. I wrote an article on this as soon as you made that because it was amazing and I knew people weren't going to understand it. Essentially, congratulations for crossing, which grade is it? The grade ritual, which produces in magical terms the master of the temple, mistress of earth. Stage 5, entering the abyss from Naos. Guru walked for a distance of 80 miles, which is immense, to do a O9A initiation. Due to the fact the initial phase of a month of existence being shared enough, and many people would have archived it for its. Yeah. I'm stupid for not archiving it. But yeah, that's what I assumed because initially I didn't connect what was going on in the video to. I actually had to ask somebody because for a minute I saw the crystal tetrahedron and I was thinking of the mostly like Chloe publicated O9A like Hostia and stuff like that, where you use a crystal tetrahedron after you in a black robe. I'm trying to remember, and you hold it after you blow up an IED. I mean, it's a very cool aesthetic of someone walking like this with a crystal tetrahedron, wearing black robes in the midst of people who have been blown apart in an IED in order to take essentially their life essence. I have a feeling that that's spook inserted material because it's not that doing that in a O9A perspective would be wrong. It's just over the top, not as subtle as a lot of the real shit is. But yeah, Guru made an amazing video. I don't know what gender you are. I assumed male from the video, but yeah, I wanted to actually congratulate you, Guru, for your initiation, but I thought at the time, because I was already in a little bit of trouble because of my interview with David Meyer. So going out and actually commenting, "Oh, congratulations on reaching, finishing the goal from essentially crossing the abyss. It's stage 5, and now that would make me look even more involved than I am, rather than just being some stupid disenfranchised occultist who finds all this stuff very, very interesting." So yeah, I actually thought that your video was something much worse than it was, but it's actually a beautiful video. And I contacted a friend, and then they very quickly just sent me within about 3 minutes 2 pages from a 1980s publication in Naus, which is the only one I refer to, because that was before all the internet bullshit started. So the authenticity of it was published by the now, I guess, infamous, and I always pronounce things wrong, Thormund. Was published by Thormund Publications in the 80s, which is the one that I reference with regards to Naus. Naus is the only well-known O9A publication that I would actually... I can't recommend shit because of the Australian counter-terrorism laws, even though technically the O9A are not a terrorist organisation. Yet in Australia, it's going through Parliament, and it's prudent for me to not break the 4 pillars of Australian counter-terrorism laws, as I call them, and then need to delete years of stuff because of how draconian the CT laws in Australia are. And given that I am somebody very independent, I have literally no protection. So that's why I am so careful. However, I can say that Naus is... don't buy it from Martinet Press. Don't buy it from any of that bullshit. My channel is purely creative for art. But yeah, you've got a lot of Richard Molt and or Christos Beast and other sort of ambient / noise music. I am legitimately a fan of your channel, and it was one of the things that made me realize there was much more to the O9A than I had initially thought. So yeah, my channel is purely created for art purposes in regards to the tradition and therefore my channel will only post content in regards to that, whether that be of my worldview, so be it. I respect that. I actually am a fan of the music on your channel. And yeah, you're one of the people that I kind of kept an eye on because with the whole O9A thing, there are so many O9As that it's become an absolute mess to try and actually navigate and work out what the fuck is going on. My early mistakes were mostly because of Martinet Press. I had absolutely no idea that the O9A even existed until last year, surprisingly enough. Last year, I can't go into it too much, but somebody I suspected to be involved, somebody was very, very secretive to me about certain things, this O9A thing. And I thought it was just some like offshoot of some lame left-hand path thing, like what's it called? The Temple of Set or something. So I had absolutely no idea. And then I looked it up and I was like, holy shit. We got a new satanic panic on our hands. This is fantastic. This is like the process church of the final judgment times 10. However, I was very paranoid that this person was trying to recruit me into the O9A in real life. And I made it very clear that I was only interested for purely research purposes. And essentially, and his whole situation, of course, becomes even so. In the end, I realized, no, this person just has a deep interest. But what turned me and a fellow occultist off from the O9A was the Martinet Press stuff. We saw this really interesting and very, very, very good stuff, especially insight roles. And with O9A praxis that was available to us with limited knowledge at the time, Hostia at least had quite a lot of interesting stuff in it, even though I am not exactly that fond. I have a more complex view of the whole thing now. But then we saw this Martinet Press stuff, and to quote my multiple friends, Martinet Press, this fucking FBI written trash, embarrassing, is the single most effective method ever created to discourage anybody who is actually legitimately dangerous to the, I guess I would call them systems of control, from being ever involved within traditions of the Order of Nine Angles, because of how over the top, edgelord, and embarrassing it is. And it absolutely just shut the door of me and everyone I know, because the edgelord Niners, who most of them are FBI sock puppet accounts holding M4A1 carbines and a copy of Hostia or some Martinet Press embarrassment. Those accounts get very quickly deleted, especially on Twitter. Not because those accounts have been banned, but because they get spooked by something. No disrespect for you guys who show your gun loadouts and shit like that. That's different. You're not doing it in an embarrassing way. And as someone who is a sports shooter myself, I very, very much understand. So I'm not disrespecting any of you guys. I'm talking about guys. I'll actually name drop a few of these ones to watch out for. Command Cultist linked directly with Martinet Press. Command Cultist is accelerationists and either directly involved as assets for the FBI and the Martinet Press operation, or they are because if Martinet Press endorsed them. If you have an endorsement for Martinet Press, initially that's not good. And that was one of them who was, and Adjuvant Point Press or something was another one linked with Command Cultists. So all of that shit those guys disappeared very quickly after trying to spook me, following me, after I made my video on Martin Press. The funniest thing that happened with that too is when I made my video on that, I had Niners ask me what should I do with my Martin Press books? People who are supposed to be fucking hardcore, independent, self-initiatory sort of Satanists, not knowing what to do. And I was like, do whatever the fuck you want with them. Ask for a refund for false advertisement. That would be funny. Just don't give them money. I'll go back to, all right, so back to Guru. The explosion of influence and popularity is no coincidence, but rather engineered. A once dead concept still exists despite all odds of theorists. I agree. Funny enough, I predicted this entire operation of discredit to the tradition years ago. I even predicted manipulation within, Chloe, and particularly mocked. And what? Oh, well, fuck them. Speaking of Chloe, I need to remember. Chloe was somebody who published a lot of stuff, and she pretended she claimed to be the official outer representative of the O9A. I mean, fuck, I should do that. I'm really tempted to do that as a joke, but I'm in such a fucking weird situation that people actually might take it seriously, which would be funny, actually. Especially because I am a complete fucking outsider. But yeah, Chloe 352. This is something published by them in. They were the big. It's a little backwards. Publishers in 2012, 2013. Apparently, Chloe. Now this is I can't guarantee this information is completely accurate. Apparently, Chloe's name is Chloe Ortega. However, since I name dropped that, I don't know. If that is completely accurate now. It seemed to be at the time. However, what I do know is that whoever she was, she is now involved with anti-fascists. So she was either a spook or a amoral opportunist. Yeah. So the main books she republished, and this is why I don't trust them, is this one. By the way, I haven't paid for these books. These are not mine. I have, for my investigation into the Order of Nine Angles, been borrowing books. This one also published. I wish I had a physical copy of Naus, but I do not trust any of the editions of Naus. There is not the 80s publication under Thorwind. But yeah, apparently Chloe, whoever the fuck she is, here's how I figured it is, says Guru. It was easy comparing wordings to original type written manuscripts from long and then you compare to publications from Chloe, you will notice contradictory statements. WSA, what's that an acronym for again? Thank you, White Star Acceptation. Also, Christos Beast, or Richard Malt, is a very confusing figure within the Order of Nine Angles, because he is one of the main reasons why David Myatt is believed to be Anton Long. Everyone knows that my position regarding David Myatt is one of he absolutely is not Anton Long. There are far more people involved in this than just David Myatt. David Myatt, however, because of the portrait by Christoph Speast or Richard Malt, has... I don't know why. If someone draws you and you don't fucking know, and or does an art piece on you. So if someone draws me and then puts the, famous symbol over it and crystal tetrahedron with it, and then post that stuff around, I have no control over that. I don't know why people... Well, I do know why. Majority of people are incredibly fucking stupid. For someone to create an alias on one document while using their own personal alias, to protect their identity is nonsense. Think about it. Yeah, I mean, David, what the fuck does David Myatt have to lose by being writing? I mean, he's a prude. He's very... I've grown to very much, in my own strange way, like David Myatt. I'm not endorsing his or any of that stuff. It's just I find him fascinating and a very interesting person to have been in correspondence with. And he is a absolute neo-Nazi to the most, in a very classical way. I have a lot of theories on certain things regarding Myatt. And I have a very good theory as to why David Myatt and Anton Long are considered to be the same person. You know what? Fuck it. I will give one out. It's just I don't want to give certain people's identities out. That's the thing. I have to be careful because I have a lot. I don't just have one O9A related contact, or I have a network in the background that you with my work going back into journalism, which is absolutely the fault of the O9A, because I never intended to ever be involved in journalism again. I was involved. I'll put this out there. I actually was a journalist, and I mostly, to tell the story of that, though, I have to go into something else that's complex about my history. I might go into that later. Spill the beans, fine. Since people, I've been very mysterious about my background, which can lead to people thinking I'm full of shit, or people thinking that I am I've had the spook allegations thrown at me many, many times, which is, of course, understandable given that I'm never specific of where I've been or what. I don't. Most of that is to protect other people's privacy. But yeah, the people are right. Technically, I guess I was a spook in the most minimal fashion way back. All right, I was recruited and I was a contractor for the government. I'm not going to say which years, but for a period of 4 years at least, 5 years. However, my morphine addiction ended up ruining that. They actually still wanted me to keep working, even when I kept trying to tell them, no, I can't. I'm having to fucking detox of morphine. They were like, no, you can still do it. Essentially, I worked as a contractor for the Australian Securities and Investment Commission, ASIC, way back in the day. ASIC are essentially, it was within financial intelligence. ASIC are the governing body of, if you want to apply for a business in Australia, you need to go through ASIC. ASIC investigate a lot of financial stuff. What happened is I was pulled from something else because I looked and kind of was the part of what they needed. And what they needed was somebody who was young and looked or was poor, in order to infiltrate loans departments in very, very corrupt banking organizations. And I was living in another state of Australia at the time, and they literally had nobody. And so essentially my job was to get corrupt loans, go through the loans process. And these loans were designed to exploit people from poor socioeconomic backgrounds. And they would make me essentially, for very little money, go and first they would give me a layout of what they wanted me to do. I would then have to perform surveillance of the building and everyone coming in and out of it from my car for about half an hour to an hour. Then I would have to go through the entire loans process with bullshit reasons. I'd go in, saying I need money to buy a wedding ring because at that time I looked like Euro trash, kind of, all Adidas, the classic. I had a shaved head, but my hair was kind of train spotting. I look like fucking the main Ewan McGregor in Train Spotting. but a Slav version. And yeah, so I looked like absolute Euro trash, and so for all these bullshit reasons, and I'd have to memorize everything down to the eye color of every employee in the fucking building. The expectations on me were huge, and the worst part about it is the intelligence reports you had to write afterwards. Anyway, I'll get to that. If they gave me a loan, they were fucked, or if they didn't give me a loan, they were fucked, depending on the circumstances. But I would always back out at the last second before they gave me a loan. And it even became elaborate where I would have sort of fake account details. I would dress differently. And anyway, I'd go through all this stuff. And then afterwards, I would have to, in the car, do more surveillance. Then I would have to do an oral intelligence report to them, which went on for probably an hour, where I had to essentially have all the names of everybody, what they look like, down to their eye color. First time doing this was an absolute disaster. I fucked up so many. They got so annoyed that I didn't remember the eye color and the last name of an employee. But I was given no training. They just they just pulled me into this. And so I was kind of this weird contractor who they would use when needed, and then I wouldn't hear from them for a long time. And then they would call me. And yeah, afterwards, I had up to 5 years of imprisonment if there were any discrepancies between my oral and written intelligence reports. So this went on between the ages. It started when I was 18 and ended when I was after 21 or so. And I did this in multiple states, but I only did this in the context of loans departments of certain very corrupt companies. One of these companies, in fact, because of the operation that I was involved in, ended up having to pay back more than $12.8 million in exploitive and corrupt loans back to people. And I was involved in that. I could give you the names of this. I could give you the newspaper articles. I'm not going to do that. The spook allegations on me are already high enough. So yeah, I at the same time I was involved in. I developed a terrible morphine addiction. Some of these loans departments were attached to pawn shops where I would sometimes I would show up and sell borrowed shit. It's a nice best way to put it, to that department, and then go next door and do my work and then spend that money on my morphine habit. So all that I essentially did was they taught me the ropes of human and tradecraft. They also essentially gave me a on-the-job training of being essentially an asset more so than anything. Intelligence officers' roles are far more extensive. I did not have networks of contacts and things like that to deal with. I was being handled directly from the Australian Securities Investment Commission's intelligence department from Sydney. So, yeah, how I got into journalism. When one of my friends was going off to Afghanistan, I showed up on a lot of cough medicine because I had a cold. That contains dihydrocodeine over the counter in Australia, and happened to meet his uncle, who was the head of a newspaper, and a very, very prominent newspaper at the time, in a state in Australia I'm not going to mention. He instantly, drunkenly became friends with me, essentially, and because I was at the time studying journalism at university, and my ability to network was very good. Funny thing was, this person's girlfriend had desperately wanted a job from this guy for fucking years, and she had like a master's or whatever in not in communications, but mostly I think it was in creative writing or some shit. And she was so she hated me because of this. My friend's girlfriend, because I had, and I was still actually, but I couldn't tell people at the time, involved with the Australian Securities Investment Commission. Well, I knew quite a bit about certain things involving that is useful for business sections of the newspaper. And that was the beginning of my undistinguished career in journalism. Essentially, I ghost wrote certain things for the business section of a certain newspaper. Regarding any other journalistic work, I guess you could say I was a terrible, terrible journalist. I would utilize, for reasons I can't go into, being in places that have no access with regards to Westerners, and my ability to have access to these areas in certain countries. But it would end up becoming such a disaster that I would end up writing a lot of material, and then one of the worst parts was I predicted I knew that Al Qaeda in South Asia were utilizing a situation to maneuver imams who were part of the cell into masjids in places. And I knew that this was going to directly lead to, because I was going to these masjids, because I was a Muslim at the time, lead to terrorist attacks from certain communities. And no one fucking listened to me. And it happened, luckily, or unluckily, depending on your perspective, it was foiled. But I have so much material from horrible overseas experiences. And It was a disaster. Me as a foreign correspondent, disastrous. I was let into one country purely because to be arrested at one point because of a massive visa application I had to do. I didn't do it. Someone else did it for me. And because at the time, my recurring cyclical morphine addiction kicked back in. And then I was subsequently, as soon as I arrived in a certain country, taken away by intelligence officers and accused of being a foreign intelligence officer who was there to subvert and as an accelerationist and to move and to use Salafist jihadist terrorist organizations to essentially destabilize the country. The only thing that saved me was corruption. And this all happened because I was going to an Islamic community that no Westerner would have access to. I had access to it for reasons I can't go into. However, stupidly, the connection of that was not in my visa, which explained why I was going there, but it made no sense. And I cannot go into this because of not so much me, because of the people involved. I was instantly apprehended. And the thing is, though, if you're ever taken under suspicion of espionage in most countries in Southeast Asia, South Asia, and Central Asia, and to some extent the Middle East, but mostly in Central, South, and Southeast Asia, you are fucked if you have a very small window of being able to save yourself before you're fucked. So what you do, once you are officially arrested and taken away, you're fucked. However, while they're apprehending you, if you're able to bribe them, then on the spot, you're all good. You're all good. They don't give a fuck about their national security when you have a significant donation to them. And so yeah, my contact there was that I was apprehended when my contact was converting Australian dollars into the currency of the country at the time, because they knew we were going to have to bribe a lot of people. They ran to my salvation and quickly bribed the intelligence officers, and I was let go on my merry way. Anyway, occult, esoteric, philosophical interest part. Yeah, absolutely. The occult stuff manifest. I've been interested in that stuff since I was very young. Mostly Satanism. When I was a teenager, I played in a lot of black metal bands back in the day. I wasn't really into the Norwegian black metal stuff as much, more the French avant-garde scene, and especially a band called Death Spell Omega, and that was the kind of music I played. And they had a kind of existential Satanism perspective that I liked, which I adopted at the time. I didn't know about the O9A. LaVeyan Satanism, as far as I was concerned, was housewife Satanism. I did not like it. I didn't. It was just too weak, and I was too edgy at the time. And so my early experiences in the occult were, my friends' own sort of pretentious, more existential look of Satanism, which I think I go into in one of my videos a little bit. And I did various occult rituals and stuff like that doing that. But we didn't take ourselves that seriously. We were mostly making fun of the rest of the fucking black metal scene, because they would go on about how they were real Satanists and Nazis and all this shit, but they'd never actually go and do anything. So we, who did not take anything seriously, we decided to outdo all of them and actually do shit. We, by the way, I was a teenager when this happened, and this is a very long time ago. We got incredibly drunk and went on a long journey that almost got us killed by bogans. Bogans are a sort of Australian white trash, because all of my friends were from European backgrounds. And at the time and in the place and in the environment we were in, a lot of the Australians did not like us because we weren't considered to be true Australians. These days, I'm completely Australian, but if you're different at all in any way back then, so a bunch of drunk bogans were going to beat the shit out of us. We're on our way we were going to steal a massive cross off the roof of a church, but it was a 40-minute walk to get there. And as soon as we left, we had 50 guys come up on us. One of my friends was older. He was the one, because me and the other guy were really young. I'm talking about underaged. This guy was a bit older, so that they all targeted him, calling him a faggot and all this shit, because he had long hair, he had an accent. And however, this guy was fucking scary. He was armed, and he had his hand on a switchblade, and he was like this close to it becoming a knife fight and something really bad. But luckily, I don't remember how we managed to not get stabbed and having facial reconstructions and shit like that, which was the norm. Majority of the people I grew up with had to get facial reconstructions because they were fucking stomped so many really bad by glass blasting meth addicted bogans. It was a real problem. And so we managed to get out of that. We managed to climb on top of the church, steal the cross, and then walk all the way back with a 6-foot cross like Christ over our backs that we would take turns holding. Somehow we didn't get arrested. And so we turned it upside down. So we had this massive, and they had a dog which would piss on the cross constantly. But like Christ, I walked through a hostile environment of bogans who wanted to beat the shit out of me with a massive cross. And yeah, we did this solely, not because we took Satanism at the time all that seriously, even though we were Satanists. We did this as a fuck you to the Australian black metal scene, who would go on and on about we're true cult black metal, blah blah blah, and never do anything. And then there was us, and then we did shit. So that was an example. So then on stage, I was able to have a massive 6-foot cross upside down, which was aesthetically really nice, really nice. And yeah, we did rituals that that the Satanists were doing that we did to make fun of them. We would do the same thing, but in the stupidest way possible. So in a way, yeah. However, I did have a very existential occult kind of satanistic view of things. Close to O9A kind of. If I knew about the Order of Nine Angles at that time, and I had access, and by the way, this was in the late 2000s. This is a long time ago. If I had access to O9A material and knew about the O9A back then, yeah, I probably would have become involved in it. Absolutely. However, that was before the Martin Press, Chloe or Ortega bullshit. Yeah. And the O9A doesn't take it. It takes itself extremely seriously, but at the same time doesn't. Which is something I like. They have a lot of japes or jokes that they perform, and as somebody who doesn't really take anything that seriously, it's very appealing to me. Anyway, any questions? I've exposed myself as having being a spook. No, I'm not a spook at all. I promise. But yeah, I highly recommend checking out Guru's channel, who's been chatting, because they've got the real sort of artistic elements of. Because to be really simplistic, there's kind of 3 O9As, where in reality there's like 100. There's what I keep referring to as the original O9A. When I use that term, I'm talking about remnants of the Order of Nine Angles that I can trace back to at least the 1980s. Because I can't tell you who my contacts are, it makes this whole process far more difficult. And I've got contacts in various different O9A circles. However, when I refer to the original O9A, I'm referring to people who I know who they are, I know their identities, or some of them at least, and I can trace them back to at least the 1980s. That's who I'm referring to as the original O9A. Then there's kind of the Richard Malt O9A, which is, or Christos Beast, which is separate from the original. And that's where a lot of the art has come out of. Guru, whose image is one of the pieces of art from the, I believe, is it the Sinister Tarot? I wish I owned it. It's unfinished. It's a beautiful sort of O9A tarot deck. It's absolutely. I've seen it. I know people who have. The only reason I don't own it, because I like it artistically, is I don't know where to buy it legitimately, and I collect tarot decks and shit like that anyway. But yeah, because the original O9A, as referred to them, they have a very anachronistic view of things. They don't usually support or endorse certain things, and they let pretenders and legitimate O9A groups based on, who create new material and stuff like that. So there's this kind of aristocratic artistic movement within this, especially this sort of middle ground O9A territory, very much associated with Dimitra Malt, Christos Beast, and Guru uploads a lot of very good sort of ambient noise music from that version of the O9A. Then there's the Chloe Ortega and even worse, Martinet Press O9A. And this is simplifying things way too much, because there are so many factions. What does a personal O9A serve? I know nothing about occultism. Even with 3 groups, it is something like a belief in magic. That's something that I didn't take into consideration, trying to explain what the O9A is to people who don't know what the O9A is already. I just assume people have a basic, which I shouldn't do. You're not going to find anything other than misinformation for the most part. The O9A is very much influenced by, probably very influenced by Anton LaVey, because initially Anton Long might be a reference to Anton LaVey, AL, but I'm not sure, because at least in the 60s, as lame as the Satanic Bible is, it was fucking revolutionary at the time. Don't buy shit from them. That Coronzon thing is embarrassing, man. We talked about how all the stories are real sinister stories, but their occult fiction is fucking terrible. Guru, yes, good. I don't believe Anton Long is a reference to LaVey. I know the O9A fucking have the same kind of perspective on LaVey and Satanism as I do. Every single group. That's just one theory that I'm not endorsing. It's about where the name Anton Long derived. However, I think that theory has been propagated deliberately as a joke, an inside joke within certain O9A groups to fuck with journalists in particular, like myself. And that's another thing. I'm in a very bizarre situation, because I've been given an immense amount of information. Church St. Antipolis said, read the letters of Stephen Brown representing O9A. This is a member of your proclaimed first group of the O9A. Yeah. All right. I'm going to be more specific with regards to Guru. I absolutely consider you to be 100% legitimate O9A adept. No, there's nothing in any way that I would consider is illegitimate in any way, given the information that I have. What you're doing is exactly what you should be doing. It's brilliant, which is why I have been keeping an eye on you, because you're you're what it should be, in a way, which Martinet Press, as I mentioned earlier, being this is the most effective method of making people who are legitimately a danger to the systems of control. The most effective method ever made of making people, and I'm talking about people who can actually infiltrate things, not in stupid ways, people who aren't just able to perform, terrorist attacks or things like that. I'm talking about people who legitimately are able to cause mass change or infiltrate the civil service and things like that. People who are actually dangerous to the system. The FBI did a fantastic job with this shit to deter anybody who might be inclined towards O9A from ever becoming actually involved, even on a personal journey kind of way, uninvolved with any Nexium or whatever. If any person perceived and understood the actual concepts of the O9A, the reason it exists, and without a basis or seeking to profit an ego, Martinet Press would be defunct, yet it was not. Brilliant statement. The disenfranchised occultists, including myself and I, last year, when I first sort of got associated with O9A stuff, material, as I did not know they existed. It was, this person was very interested in it and did not understand why there is such a mix of really amazing stuff, insight rolls in particular, and then this trash. I understand now, but even in my own stupidity, I didn't go and research Martinet. I don't know how Martinet Press is even still in operation. Well, Martinet Press has one purpose these days, other than being the best deterrent for people becoming involved in the O9A who are actually people who would be a danger, not necessarily as terrorists, but as people who aren't edge lords, who will buy into immolating themselves as opfers, essentially, to perform some stupid terrorist attack or some bullshit, not realizing that they have essentially been completely used themselves as becoming offers, their character test failures, the fact, however, it serves the overall purpose. But I do not understand how it's just a money. It's just a way for the FBI to be able to generate money now in order to fund clandestine operations. Because, I mean, most intelligence operations, you can break them down really into there's overt operations, there's covert, and then there's clandestine. Clandestine operations are operations that are run that have essentially no connection to at all in any way the intelligence agency that a clandestine operation breaks off from. They are deliberately given complete self-sufficiency and accountability being the most important element within the civil service. Accountability in the intelligence services being the absolute basis of how they have to operate. Well, if you don't want accountability, you go, oh, this guy, this intelligence officer, you go and do this operation. Don't tell any of us anything that you're doing. Get funds in ways that is completely cannot be traced to the budget of the agency. So things like this are a great way of generating income in order to fund clandestine operations. Because the taxpayer is not paying for the clandestine operation, there is no accountability because the person running this splinter cell clandestine operation is not giving any information to the higher ups. And yeah, they use, as I said, I've been involved in financial intelligence. There is a myriad of ways to fund these operations that can be done in order to not link it to the intelligence services. And clandestine operations are the most interesting and most dangerous because of that lack of accountability. Martin and Press is literally a brilliant way for only an operation because edgelords, it appeals to them, and even though the O9A is very anti-Kabbalah, very Hermetic in its tradition, very European-centric, Karonzon, which someone mentioned earlier, is from Enochian magic, which is very Christian, or in an O9A perspective, Nazarene in its influence. And I guess you could justify using Karonzon in the context of O9A, but still, Martin and Press are very good at being sensationalist. And yeah, it was enough to completely make me think that the O9A was only a intelligence operation to create alt-right terrorists in order to then have them commit attacks that they can then foil Ethan Mauser, and then to be able to establish harsher counterterrorism laws specifically targeting the right. Because the alt-right and neo-Nazism and hard nationalist perspective political groups and organizations, they really collapsed after the late 2000s. By the sort of 2011, 2012, there were not that many, but they needed Nazis. They needed the alt-right when the social justice thing became big. And congratulations, you've created the alt-right now. You've created it. It returned, or Combat 18, which was completely defunct in Australia in 2010 because of a terrorist attack they committed. And I know these individuals because I had to deal with Combat 18 a lot. Combat 18, David Mayat was one of the most prominent members of the original Combat 18 back in the early 90s to late 90s, along with its creators, Steve and Charlie Sargent. However, after a whole bunch of things I won't go into now, the Combat 18 remnants that established itself in Australia has no connection with David Mayat. They have connections to the informant, who were Browning, who informed on Charlie Sargent, etc. And Browning is the guy behind the record labels that published, bands like Screwdriver and stuff. But he was a fucking, stool pigeon. He flipped on people. And so this isn't... Yeah. It's interesting with the David Mayat thing, because I've had to deal with people who, especially after the 1999 London nail bombings by Copland, who was a repressed homosexual, disenfranchised with the British National Party, and essentially uninvolved with anything really beyond being disenfranchised with the BNP. And if he owned any text by David Mayat, well, I could publish something, and from what I know, Copland had no associations with any paramilitary neo-Nazi groups like Combat 18. The White Wolves are a psyop, most likely done by MI5 because there's never been any evidence of their existence, to try and take responsibility to crack down on neo-Nazi organizations that came out of disenfranchised British National Party stuff. Anyway, it's a whole nother issue. I've even had interesting communications with David Mayat about the history of Combat 18. Because of its very personal nature, because I had to deal with Combat 18, friends joined. I didn't. Funnily enough, Combat 18 ended up having a branch in Serbia. And the reason I was not radicalized into neo-Nazism when I was a teenager by Combat 18 was because they found out my tarnished ancestry with regards to Serbia. And so all of a sudden, I was not allowed into people's houses because I was not pure Aryan. Funnily enough, most of these guys with shaved heads had brown eyes. My eyes are green. They didn't like that. Most of these guys were very, with pictures of them before they joined with hair, and very Mediterranean, very, very common. So that was bullshit. That's why I want to. And then also they tried to kill a friend of mine who was in Combat 18. Friend of mine was involved there. Was recruited, and he got into it hardcore. He did a lot of stuff I can't go into. Also, Combat 18 and a lot of neo-Nazis back then were always about, we don't do, drugs. We don't do. They were all shooting methamphetamine. All of them. Combat 18 in particular in Australia, they were all intravenously using meth. I mean, you can justify that. I mean, methamphetamine was utilized by the Nazis for blitzkrieg in Perverton. Methamphetamine was also used by just over the counter, and it was over the counter in Australia until the 1960s. So you can justify it that way. But they weren't taking a few tablets of Perverton. They were shooting 0.5 grams of crystal. And doing stupid shit and selling meth to Aryan junkies. So, not to say that some weren't legitimate and in their beliefs, but it's easy to become. They really targeted 14-year-olds to recruit, and yeah. I definitely would have probably ended up being a fucking involved with Combat 18 other than just an association if the Serb thing didn't become such a issue. I even house-sitted for some members of Combat 18, and when they found out the Serb thing, they wouldn't let me in the front door, but they were too cowardly to beat the shit out of me. So I'd have to wait out the front until my friend would come out. I was even banned from playing in the majority of black metal bands at the time because I wasn't Aryan. It was fucking ridiculous. So stupid. Yet Serbia is, if you want a country as an example of ethno-fascism, fucking Serbia all the way. I guess I'm interested in extremists because I come from a long family history. I'll reply to questions in a sec, but I'll say this. I come from a long family history of extremists. My grandfather, I can say this because I don't give a shit anymore, as my involvement in anything relating to normal, academia and things like that. That's fucking gone. I don't need to hide. Hatred of Serbia by academia. I can't go into the situation, but my Serbian ancestry has gotten me into trouble more than anything else. My grandfather fought in World War II in the Royal Serbian Regiment of the Yugoslav Army. When the Yugoslav Army was destroyed very quickly by the Nazis, he ran off into the mountains to join up with Uncle Draza Mihailovic, the leader of the Chetnik group. who are royalists. My grandfather was a royalist, and so yeah, the Chetnik flag is inscription from Cyrillic is for king and fatherland, freedom or death. So you can understand what kind of group these were. So they were royalist, nationalist, and a guerrilla warfare force who fought the Nazis and the Italian fascists and fought alongside the communist partisans. But they were not communists, and this caused big problems. The Chechnik group, my grandfather was an officer. There's pictures of my grandfather with Draza Mihailovic, the leader of the Chechnik group, who was subsequently executed by the communist Tito when they took over Yugoslavia. But the Chechnik were they fought an insurgency, Taliban style, all the way through World War II. That's what, and my grandfather was essentially a terrorist and fought for the Principality of Serbia and for Greater Serbia. In World War II, and the Chechniks were betrayed by the partisan communist pieces of shit, by Tito. And then at the end of the war, they really realized that, fuck, these partisans are the real problem now. And so remnants of the Germans who the Chechniks were killing joined to try and fight the partisans. So and I've even got a stranger history because my grandfather was also related in some way or form. And you won't believe this. Gavrilo Princip, the guy who was part of a terrorist organization from Serbia called the Black Hand. The Black Hand, Serbia, unification or death. We're a secret society and terrorist organization. Gavrilo Princip, depending. Was the guy who assassinated the Archduke Ferdinand. Apparently, my grandfather is related to him. I would have to ask my father more details on this. And my family were connected to the Principality of Serbia itself and various revolutions against the Ottomans in the 1800s. So extremism is very interesting to me. Secret society is interesting to me because I've grown up on stories, mostly from my father, of my grandfather's exploits and the Serbian exploits. However, I wish to state nothing to do with the breakup of Yugoslavia. Nothing to do with any of that shit. Tito put all Chechnik officers to death, including my grandfather, so he had to fucking escape once the communists took over. And yeah, this whole complex background and paramilitary groups and the history of Yugoslavia and all this stuff I haven't seen my family since the Civil War. Anyway, I'll go back to answering questions and so. Okay, so I apologize for being. I mean, I've got nothing to apologize about. This is an experiment. Whoever screams the loudest attracts the most attention, says Guru. I have no purpose to scream, unlike certain groups, nor people with genuine insight. Have nothing to prove. Who don't seek information. Those who don't seek information. Guru is completely right. This is what impressed me. The majority of art, literature. This is not literature. Actual literature and music are shared on a personal basis between people in privately in O9A circles, I guess I should say, legitimate ones. By legitimate, I just mean you don't have to be in your 60s and have been in the O9A from its inception. The O9A is subject. There are so many different O9As. However, Guru is essentially exactly what the O9A is sort of supposed to be with the younger generation. But as he or she says, screaming the loudest get the most attention is absolutely true. Then Killer Name said, I believe the Temple of Sun, before its tradition was integrated, it had Enochian keys. Azazel, yeah. It works and Karonzon. No, the Temple of Blood. I had one contact bragging about their involvement in the Temple of Blood. There's nothing to brag about with that. It's embarrassing. However, some people have been endorsed by Martinet who are not accelerationists, wreckers, spooks, whatever you wish to call it. Martinet could do a press release right now and say, oh, this Interzone guy, he's actually involved in all this shit. You mentioned on Twitter the other day, probably jokingly, about moving to Serbia. Yeah. How have you ever actually considered that? Or would you, if your journalist career goes good, consider us? Yeah. I am very much considering it. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if I wanted to, I would be able to move there because my father has property and I have family there who could give me a job. It's just the ability to do so financially, to move there, and the logistics and the medical. I have some medical problems. The organization behind all that is huge. However, definitely, if I get too much pressure because of the kind of shit that I do, I would absolutely have to abandon everything and I would move to Serbia, because the counterterrorism laws in Australia are ridiculous. They're terrifying, to be honest. And all I can say is, despite being completely unknown outside of very obscure circles, I have not had an easy year. Interviewing someone like David Maya, that is not something that does not come without risk in a country. And I live in a state in Australia where any form or display of Nazi. I live in the most leftist state in Australia, in Victoria. Everyone knows that I live in Melbourne. And Melbourne recently passed a law where it's a $30,000 fine if you do a Sieg Heil in public, any Nazi symbol in public. They say context matters. No, context does not matter. It's an instant $30,000. I realized when I was in a cafe writing about Combat 18, going through David Myatt material for something that I am putting together alongside other things, swastikas and all kinds of symbols are popping up, and people are looking at my computer, and then I realized, fuck, this is a $30,000 fine, even though I'm just doing work essentially. And yes, it's bad. And Serbia is a very unpopular country in the West. Serbia, of course, supports its. I mean, Serbia is just surrounded by enemies, and Russia being really the only ally Serbia has. And so Serbia, is a place where, yes, things have become far, far more tolerant. However, if they don't like somebody in a position of power, I mean, even even in the 2000s, they just fucking, kill them. Serbia will always have a nationalist view because of how it's been treated on the by the international state system. Kosovo being the most grievous example of intervention by the UN over something that is Albanians threatened to kill me anyway, so who gives a fuck? Albanians have absolutely no reason to be in fucking Kosovo. It is not their fucking ancestral homeland. Albania exists. They were in the 90s. The shit they did. I'm not going to go into it because I don't hate people or ethnic groups. It's by an individual basis. But Serbia are very, they were reactionary, yes. But imagine coming home to and you find your family missing. So you go into the woods and you see naked bodies of your daughters and Polaroid pictures on their bodies of them being gang raped. It's understandable that you might have a reaction in a situation like that, and a village might disappear after that. it was not a one-sided affair, as Western media likes to put it. I mean, fuck, they bombed the shit out of civilian in Belgrade on a whim. I mean, that I can't even think of another case of that happening in a situation. I mean, it's the equivalent of, I mean, other than the Middle East, of course, but yeah, the Clintons in particular, NATO, have cut me off from essentially being able. Yeah, they made things very difficult, but things are better now. But yeah, absolutely would consider moving to Serbia. It's doing what I do in Australia, where what I do can be perceived very easily as extreme because my methods are not conventional. I am not pushing the same fucking narrative as, and I'm happy to talk with extremists because I believe that you need to, in order to find, in order to, how I used to justify this. I've been doing this for a very long time, not just as a journalist, but within other areas such as academia, to justify having contacts with people in extremist organizations. If these people have no voice and it's cut off and nothing but ostracization and further disenfranchisement by the state system, they will become more extreme. They get further and further pushed out of mainstream society, further building the belief system, especially with neo-Nazi organizations, very influenced by things like the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which was a hoax from Russia. However, the whole conspiracy of the Jews run the world, all that stuff, I don't subscribe to that, as I have a very different belief system as to the systems of control. Mine is very different. And then there's the non sort of extreme, globalization, globalists behind everything, George Soros, all that kind of stuff. You're giving too much credit to these fucking people, to these elites. And same with with regards to Jews. I have a friend in Israel, right? A Jewish friend in Israel. And he sums it up the best. And don't fucking say, oh, you know, he's Zog. This guy is as disenfranchised as most of the people I associate with. To quote my friend, he said, "How the fuck can the Jews control the world when we can't run our own fucking country?" That is a good and a good way to put it. There are no elites. The system of control is in place. It is irrelevant who put it there. It is irrelevant as to why. You just need to know how it operates and how to maneuver in it. The greatest example of why the elites are not elite, look up a man called Charles II from Spain. He is the last of the Spanish what's the name? Habsburg line. He is the incest. I don't have anything set up, otherwise I would show you this guy. He is a very amusing appearance. But you want to know who your fucking elites are? They're people like fucking Charles II from Spain. This guy. Mentally retarded, completely deformed. This is another person, another Habsburg. I believe this is from the Austrian-Hungarian kind of line. Very perfection, 100% pure Aryan. No, the system has been put in place. The people who run the system have no idea what the fuck they're doing. People give them too much credit. Anyway, I'll go into my perspective one day. But yeah, Australia has become very, very, especially Victoria, authoritarian to the point where it is legitimately, anyone I know who's interested in anything that's not mainstream have moved into states of paranoia. That's how fucking bad it's become. Because even just researching this stuff can get you into big, big trouble here. It's all I can say is I as somebody who is completely unknown in Australia, have had to consult lawyers because of implications of this movement back into journalism. And even then, I only have one defense if they decide to bring down CT laws onto me. I can be taken for 72 hours with no warrant, with absolutely no contact to any of my family or, loved ones, friends, detained and interrogated with no lawyer for 72 hours, like that. Now I know there's draconian laws in most countries, but Australia is obsessed with neo-Nazis, far-right extremists. And the intelligence services here have great pressure to find people. And, you buy a book from, let's say, an organization that it doesn't have to be a terrorist organization, but one that is deemed as an extremist one. And you buy a $5 book because you are wanting to research it, and you actually have no interest in this organization to join. You are interested in it for research purposes, right? And you give $5 and you get the book. You have a 20-year prison sentence that they can just throw on you for providing fund. It's not the book or the ideology that matters. It's the fact that you have provided any financial support, even $5, to a extremist or terrorist organization. that is what they will get you for. That is why I do not purchase anything, involved with anything. Because that is breaking, I mean, one of the 4 pillars of the Australian counterterrorism laws. I call them that as a reference to the 5 pillars of Islam, because I used to be a Muslim. And I live by the 4 pillars of the Australian counterterrorism laws. It sucks having to do that as somebody who is just legitimately interested in trying to find out a non-narrative truth about a situation without placing judgment on the people involved, just trying to get it pure information. It is, yeah, I'd at least be able to do that with far more freedom in Serbia, that's for sure. And I can't go into why I'm like this. It's just, I'm not a paranoid person. I wouldn't be continuing this stuff if I was. But God, have things become, it's sad. Things have become, it's a climate of fear now. People are becoming very, very paranoid. People who are involved in literally nothing other than a interest in things like the O9A, in Australia, are becoming very, very paranoid. And yeah, so I've spilled the beans on my absolutely lowest level spook background. I've talked about the Serbian heritage stuff, connections to family connections to extremists, all that shit, which is why I'm interested in a lot of this stuff. Stupid shit I did as a teenager. Yeah, I never would have talked about this stuff 3 weeks ago. No, my situation's changed. I don't care anymore. I don't give a fuck anymore about how I am perceived, as long as what I do, and this is not work in the same sense. I am not being professional right now. This is casual. As long as I can do work that is good, that's all that matters. All this other shit doesn't. And yeah, if I can do independent journalism full time, that means I won't have to, by default, work for the Australian civil service. So, which would probably make me have to nuke my entire fucking channel and delete myself from the internet. I know most of my shit is archived, but that's mostly the Christian shit. Kiwi Farms archived all that. But anyway, I can change my appearance and work for the civil service, even though I don't want to, and I absolutely despise the Australian government. I'll never get involved in politics either. I do not support any political party or movement. I don't even vote. You have to legally, otherwise you're fined significant amounts of money. So I deliberately either draw my own box and write something stupid in there and tick it, or if my name is attached, if it's a mail vote, I vote for all the parties that will never get any power, and even communist ones that I am ideologically opposed to. Yeah, I'll give them my vote because they're never going to get any fucking power. So I sabotage my own ability to be a part of democracy. Fuck democracy. It doesn't work. We're under some ridiculous totalitarianism. Embarrassing. So yeah, I'll go soon unless people have some questions. I highly recommend people look into things like Humint. A really good way to do that is there's a lot of field manuals out there, mostly by the American Army, that are not only declassified, but actually recent. Because the thing with human intelligence is it will never change. The way how a human intelligence officer has to operate fundamentally is not going to change. And it's very useful to know how the intelligence services operate in order to be able, even though it might be in the context of military intelligence, you cross-transfer that into foreign or national intelligence and counterterrorism intelligence and counter-espionage. And you're able to sort of understand the basic tradecraft of everything. Like this is a field manual from the United States Army on human intelligence collective operations. This is from 2006. This is the most boring one because it is completely dry, but it is very interesting. I have some really good ones on human intelligence interrogation. On declassified US documents, what's your opinion on Project Stargate? Personally, I don't think that it was impressive. That's interesting. Hold on one sec. Oh, yeah, psychic phenomena in military. The Chinese did some impressive shit with that. There are some, this has been years, so I don't know. I've moved around a lot. Oh, thank you. Hey, my name is Harry. Chinese were doing a lot of research on this, the Chinese communists. And like there's this bizarre picture of a guy's hand phasing through glass in a Chinese intelligence. Now, of course, I think this is from like the 60s. But yeah, the intelligence services, especially human intelligence, is mostly developed from influenced by not only Freemasonry, but mostly from the Jesuits. The Jesuits are the foundation of modern intelligence tradecraft. the Catholic Order of Jesus Christ, the Jesuits, established by Xavier. These guys, in essentially, I mean, we may think of plans in days. The Jesuits think in plans of 500 years. They are a far more dangerous organization than people think. The movie Silence, by a brilliant movie by Martin Scorsese, a passion project, and the book Silence by one of my favorite pieces of literature, even though I'm not a Christian. What's the guy's name? I'm really bad with him. Shusaku Endo. I highly recommend reading this book if you want to see how essentially the Order of the Jesuits actually completely, deliberately subverted Japan with missionaries. The Order of the Jesuits founded, Francis Xavier. They didn't take Christianity to Japan. Why I wonder why they went to Nagasaki. Why not Kyoto? If you're going to get powerful people to join to become Christians as your mission. No, it's Nagasaki because that's the trade and that's the port cities. The Dutch East India Company, essentially the Dutch Protestants were the only people allowed to trade the Japanese for a long period. The Jesuits are of course a Catholic order, not fans of the Dutch, and they are mostly in their origins Portuguese, and the Portuguese Empire in this period was extensive. The Spanish were more notorious. However, you should definitely look into the Portuguese. So Francis Xavier and later Jesuits went to Nagasaki and converted daimyos in the region and mostly peasants to Catholicism in a port city and region where all of Japan's trade internationally came out of, to displace the Dutch, not for religious reasons, but for the sake of Portugal and other Catholic trading. And now the movie can't go into this shit because the movie is essentially focused more on the religious element by the naive main character. And despite this being a book of literature, it is for the most part heavily based on real people, and so these missionaries converted something like 300,000 Japanese, and then they created a rebellion in Nagasaki that had to be put down brutally. This rebellion, and then this is why Christianity was cracked down on so hard by the Japanese, is they realized that these aren't missionaries. They don't give a fuck about the average peasant. They want total trade to displace and subvert Japan and to displace the Dutch and other Protestant trading companies. It's all about, it is an amazing intelligence operation. To this very day, missionaries are one of the main ways that foreign intelligence services like the CIA, MI6, ACIS in Australia are maneuver agents. Agents is a shit word. Agents are people like Sutters who are assets. Agents in the context of the intelligence services in Australia and the UK. An agent is a store pigeon, an informant. An intelligence officer is the person who manages a network of assets. But yeah, I'll stop going on about the intelligence services. I'm very, very obsessed with them. And because they're occultists. Occult just means secret. And having a network of assets and the ways of which you control, and it's very useful if you're somebody who has a network of contacts for information, because you're doing the same fucking thing. Anyway, I've not watched your video on Jake Hanrahan. All right, the Hanrahan thing. Jake Hanrahan, I really did not. I really got angry about it. He and I have reconciled finally yesterday. So Jake Hanrahan, he and I are on good terms. What happened is everyone knows that an argument happened on Twitter, and I didn't know who the fuck Jake Hanrahan was at the time. But Thormund 15 and Jake Hanrahan were arguing about something, mostly about how David Mayat is Anton Long. And then because I don't agree with that, I said something along the lines of, I've got screenshots of this shit that I use to remember for the video, but I don't quite recall what. I made a joke mostly, and I said you have to look at it from multiple angles spelled in capital letters. And then Jake Hanrahan instantly said O9A propagandist posing as a journalist, be gone. And then he blocked me. And I got really pissed off at that, because I didn't have a chance to argue back. And I'm trying to do the same thing he is, which is somebody as a complete fucking outsider trying to work out what the fuck is going on. And yeah, this caused a lot of people to schizo post about me being a secret neo-Nazi O9A terrorist pretending to be a journalist. And at one point I had one guy who would post about me 70 fucking times within a couple of hours. And this also didn't make me look very good in a lot of ways, because well, in the video, I did state that I actually respect what Jake Hanrahan is trying to do, and I do. Jake Hanrahan is essentially doing what I wish to do. You know, he is, and of course, some of the people that I have within my network really fight with Hanrahan a lot. And so what ended up happening is Hanrahan, how it got reconciled is I decided to actually take something Hanrahan said, because what annoyed me was he would post on my YouTube about shit, yet keep me blocked on Twitter, thus making me not visible to any of his followers, whilst being able to contact me and talk shit, which is a good tactic, because if he engages me at all that's going to happen is people who follow him will start following me, and everything I say is in direct conflict with the majority of shit that Hanrahan says. And so I don't know if that was the reason why he did that. His no argument policy is definitely, but that's on popular front. Him as an individual or person, it's fine. But I decided to actually, because he got annoyed that I said that he was offered the same interview by Maya that I was, but he declined. Hanrahan then stated, I mean, this all happened yesterday, so it's, I was shocked. I did not think he and I would ever reconcile, but he said, I did not decline. Mayat wanted to duel. I said okay. He never responded. Now, anyone who knows anything about David Mayat knows damn well he has a tendency in the 90s in particular to challenge people to a duel with deadly weapons. And when David Mayat does this, he does it in absolute dead seriousness. Duels with pistols. He did that to many journalists in the late 90s, and he also did that to people like Browning in Combat 18, when Browning informed on other members after the murder of another member in Combat 18. And so he's been, I actually like that system. The whole system Mayat is pushing with regards to duels is a system based upon suspicion. And that as honorable Nazi men, we should, and I'm not a Nazi, I'm just saying we should be more honorable and not place these inclinations of suspicion on people and then talk behind their backs. We should directly ask and confront them with honor about our suspicion. And then if the issue cannot be resolved, it then goes to a duel with deadly weapons. Now, using deadly weapons is very, very intelligent, because that is a far, far, far more efficient means of quelling violence and infighting, because of the danger of having to fight in a fucking 18th century Joseph Conrad style duel with pistols, rather than just some stupid shit like people do on YouTube where they box, which is fucking lame. They should bare knuckle brawl and beat the shit out of each other until one's anyway. So that system, because all of Mayat's work is usually an all-encompassing system that is, sadly, a lot of it that is really good would only work if human nature was better, because naturally the majority of people do not have the honor to abide by a system like that without exploiting it. Mayat has far more faith on the majority of people than I do. That's all I'll say about that. So Hanrahan, a troll pretending to be Mayat, challenged Hanrahan to a duel because they thought it would be funny. because out of context, it is funny for somebody to challenge someone to a duel with deadly weapons in this day and age is a very absurd notion. I love it, but yeah, people who love him or hate him, a lot of people find that aspect of my artwork amusing. And as I said, it is. So I decided, okay, I'll take this seriously. Did Maya actually challenge Hanrahan to a duel? So I went through my network of contacts and found out, to the best of my knowledge, what the fuck was going on. Now, everything, of course, within this lens is bias. However, I know some things I can't go into that are... Yeah, so I told, essentially, I explained to Hanrahan that it was a troll pretending to be Mayat, and this troll was banned along with the Diadatic account on Twitter, and who was also not David Mayat, but people seem to believe that Diadic was. And Hanrahan seemed to believe that Formand 15 is or was David Mayat. However, that was not the case, and that's what caused this whole stupid argument in the first place, is the fact that I was defending Thormand 15 because I know who Thormand 15 is. I'm not going to tell you who they are, but I know who they are, and they're not David Mayat. So that's what caused him blocking me, is me trying to tell him, no, they're not David Mayat. So then I went through and I found out the whole story, and I essentially said the truth, that Mayat has never challenged Hanrahan to a duel with deadly weapons. And I asked if he could unblock me, because I went to great effort to find out the story behind what had happened, and took his claims very, very seriously, which I did. And to my absolute shock, Hanrahan unblocked me and yesterday, and has been a very good sport. Hasn't asked me to get rid of my video, because he did slander me publicly. And yeah, that video I made was essentially, nobody knew I was going to go after Hanrahan. This was just personal. I wanted to make it clear that I will go after you if you fuck with me. And I kept it to not be slander. However, I did bring up a lot of theories people have on Hanrahan, and not just ones by people within my associated contacts, but in other groups. So for now, Jake Hanrahan and I are on good terms. Naturally, this could change, but I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, because some form of communication is far better than total animosity, as that serves no one. And him doing this has, of course, unsilenced me, and they, brought people who like Hanrahan over to looking into my bizarre mess of my work. So for that, that's something. Yeah, I respect that. So he's analyzing something so intensely, yet he's not understanding it at all. The journals he posts in opinion pieces, not accurate news. Yes, a proper O9A and Hanrahan. He and I have vastly different views on the entire situation, and most of the problem is he doesn't have the right contacts. And I'm not saying that I do either. It's just I'm on better terms with people who might have information that is more accurate. Because I am not averse to talking to people who will start going on about Zog and shit like that. It doesn't bother me. I mean, fuck, I used to be a Muslim. I was surrounded by, you know, I've never been anti-Semitic. That's something I just have never really understood. However, my ex-wife was. Jesus Christ. I know that was because she was an Arab aristocrat, but anyway, I've been around this stuff so my whole life, been around extremists and all kinds of shit. So it doesn't bother me. You can have your own perspective as long as you don't try and kill me. You know, I don't give a fuck. I will politely disagree. I'm not going to argue my case irrelevantly that, you know, my reasoning behind why I do not believe a Zionist occupational government exists. There's absolutely no benefit in me doing something like that to somebody whose information has absolutely nothing to do with that. So that's where a lot of the problems are, is everyone knows who knows anything about the O9A, fucking with journalists is an absolute approved practice. And I am absolutely in no way somebody who is not being fucked with. Of course I am. But if information checks out, I'll roll with it. So the O9A thing has been the single most difficult thing to navigate I have ever come across with regards to information, because of how many different O9As there are, how many fake or spook O9A, you know, Martin the Press types, and then, you know, I get shit from people who are prominent in other areas who are at war with my other contacts. It's a fucking nightmare to navigate. And they're all trying to, and I don't know why they give a shit that much about me, because I'm only an authority in the sense of having some information of how the O9A in theory should operate, and how a lot of the original or whatever O9A operate, and what is in it. I've got a glimpse into that most don't have, who are not involved. And I think as an outsider, you know, people are definitely wanting me to become O9A because they think it will be funny. People are definitely wanting me to all of a sudden start becoming very alt-right. I got accelerationists because it's funny. It's funny to try and turn somebody and make, or just make someone something. They have a good sense of humor. The ones that piss me off more than anything are the ones who try and turn me against other contacts, but give me no evidence, no information, other than trying to play on my pride that people are laughing at me in this, you know, secret jape that is what's happening to me, and I don't care. I know it's a mess. There is no way for me to operate without it being an absolute fucking nightmare. But that's what's fun about it. Only reason I haven't made any more O9A videos is purely because the David Meyer interview took a long time, and I had to go through almost pretty much everything he has ever written in order to facilitate that interview properly. Why do you believe people become so fixated on O9A to create whole backgrounds and careers in mystifying and attempting to decode the workings while going nowhere generally? See, I really like whoever the fuck you are, Guru, because you are the only fucking person who is legitimate in the sense of I've seen you doing on video one of the fucking essentially most grueling occult rituals you can do. And as somebody who performed the fucking Abramelin operation for 6 months last year, I very much respect somebody who actually goes and does it. And what you did is unbelievably impressive. Yet you have never tried to influence me, from what I know. Unless you have a lot of sock puppet accounts trying to fuck with me, from what I know, you have never personally contacted me in any way to give me information, to turn me against other people, to tell me shit trying to play at my pride or whatever. And from what I know, you are not associated with the remnants of the O9A in, because you're obviously not in your 60s. So that's why I jumped on that video that you made and made an article on it within 30 minutes. And the reason why is because it gives authority and power to their group. Most of these people are such pretentious dickheads. What is interesting though is a lot of people who have contacted me who are prominent, who I can't go into, who have been very annoyed at my work, have subsequently been disappeared in publicly and denounced the O9A, some of them. I'm not giving information to other people about other people, if you know what I mean. But the older network always comes out unscathed in a way. And like any a contact and a network of contacts in the context of human intelligence, when you have a good relationship with a contact that genuinely gives you and information that genuinely does, even if it's incredibly biased, do way beyond what your expectations of them are. That in the context of the of human intelligence in the American Army, the life of a U.S. Army soldier is below that of an asset of a U.S. Army intelligence officer. The asset must be saved if they're in danger. That is how because it takes a long time to build a network of contacts and to build a mutual beneficial arrangement and trust. And in the context of human intelligence, in a military perspective, that person becomes a priority, and that network becomes a priority over the lives of even US soldiers. So I guess what I'm saying is I operate in a similar manner, where, because it takes months to build up networks and contacts and trust, which could all absolutely be turned against you and is in many cases. But yeah, that's what I can say. I do not know why people care so much about what is and isn't O9A, why people want to, because I never claim to be I'm not associated. I am only telling trying to tell the perspective of what the O9A is legitimately was about, from its, not from its inception, but from its most sort of productive period. I mean, I don't even know if I have huge doubts at the first 20 years of O9A existence even happening, because I don't have direct evidence. But I don't argue that, because it is not really significant. But yeah, the O9A has become way more than just a normal occult secret society. The idea of it has taken over, and people want to control that idea, because if you control the idea, you then control it, then becomes real. You can make it real. Martinet Press have made a O9A, one that is exactly what the intelligence services want. Even though it's not O9A, doesn't matter. So I think that, and a lot of people absolutely hate me using that terminology about the idea, but you control the idea, the mythology of something, you can then take away everything legitimate about that person. People are too lazy to actually go through their material or writings, or don't have a ability to go through or find it, because you need to know people to understand any of this shit. It then becomes real. The myth of David Mayat is more real than him. The idea of him is, and he hates this. He absolutely hates me using this terminology, but he's a good example. The idea of him now is cemented. There's nothing and I've tried to demystify it as much as I can, because I'm interested in what's real. But in a way, as the title of this stream dictates, nothing is real. that's why I go on about the intelligence services a lot, is to navigate any of this. Yeah, it's I wish more people like Guru and I know a lot of people do exist like Guru. I know people like Guru. They're the ones that I think the O9A needs to convert itself into a new name, and to have a new society completely disconnected to the O9A and use everything that makes the O9A brilliant and have it under something completely different. Use obscurantism. Change insight roles to role-playing or some shit, Do the same thing, obscuritist shit that the intelligence services do. Oh, killing civilians, oh, that's collateral damage. This is why I go on about the intelligence services all the fucking, well, in this video at least, why I'm so obsessed with them. The control of language. Anyway, from my perspective, the reason the tradition stood the test of time is really due to the leaderless structure, absolutely. It is not directionless, therefore attempts from anyone to control it are fruitless. Guru, if you could do me a favor, if you're comfortable, can you get in contact with me privately? Via my email or something. It's absolutely fine. If not, but yes, the O9A essentially functions in the same manner that Al Qaeda function. It is a decentralized splinter cell organization. I'm not calling it a terrorist organization because it's not. And unlike Al Qaeda or Al Qaeda, it is leaderless. As far as I know, Anton Long is probably multiple people. And most O9A material is not O9A. It's material that comes from all kinds of backgrounds. How the O9A actually functions is on a person-to-person basis. It's not in a normal occult secret society style. It is personal. They will tailor it to you as the individual and direct you to things that you will find interesting, that you realize are, even though you might be, say, in my case. Now, as I said, I have nothing. I'm gonna have to stop this soon. I have nothing to do with the O9A, other than being dragged into this bizarre situation. By being given information and access to things that changed my views on it, everything. One of the ways that they do it is because they know that I used to be a Muslim, sincerely a Muslim. They know that I might find certain ideas interesting. So they will send me a PDF of something. And it might seem unrelated, but it is completely related. They sent me a PDF of, and I can send this link to this Wikipedia article because this is not in any way O9A material, so I am not proliferating any form of extremist propaganda, etc., etc. I know it sounds paranoid, but you live in Australia. If you live under Australian counter-terrorism laws, it's best to be fucking. Trust me. You have to be like this. Now they gave me this book, and it essentially broke my computer. They didn't just give me a translation. Oh, thank you, vernacular name. I appreciate people showing up. I thought nobody was going to show up. And they know that I've been involved in some way or form in international relations. And they know that I, with regards to IR theory, that I am what is called a realist. Now, I have nothing to do with IR anymore. So it doesn't fucking matter. But this is essentially very similar to realism, and also very similar and is a Islamic sociological perspective that I can't go into certain aspects, but this is how they actually operate. Fuck, what's on it? Good. Okay. So randomly, I'll get an email from original remnant O9A, right? And they send me a PDF of this, 160 whatever megabyte book, which has nothing at all to do with O9A praxis. But because they know I would have a predisposition to Islamic philosophy, and because they know that I am interested in aeonics, and also I cannot believe I never heard of the concept of asabiya. And I'm going to tell you what asabiya is in the context of the Order of Nine Angles, and why it is central to O9A belief. Yet, almost it is never really referenced that much, because the concept is utilized in other names, but it is very, very central to the whole way of operation. So, Guru, I will give you first what is my public email, meaning my business email. It's a Proton mail. Let me just. And we can go from there. I might be late to reply because after this, I've got a lot of stuff going on. This is, as I said, my public email, which is why I'm fine with putting it on YouTube. Yeah, so if you contact me on there and just say that you're Guru, and then I'll know who you are, because I get very few people contacting me even though I have this publicly on my. However, the people who have I get a lot of emails. That's the best way to put it. So now this goes back into the confusion of why people think Mayat is Anton Long. Mayat being somebody who is proficient in Old Greek and Arabic. Just because ideas are incorporated into some core O9A praxis doesn't mean that Mayat is directly involved in that. I have a whole theory about it. Mostly it's, if you look at Anton Long stuff from the 70s and Mayat stuff from the 70s, and then you start seeing it in the 80s and 90s, it starts to look quite similar. It's because I believe it is edited by the same person. And this person, because of the very scholarly nature of this person, uses a lot of referencing. Oh, fuck, I've just given away the game here, I think. If somebody edits my work and Jake Hanrahan's, our style, I don't know what his writing style is like, but our style will be, depending on how heavy-handed the editor is, could be very similar. The structure will be similar. The way so that's my belief, because of neo-Nazis in the O9A having a network with neo-Nazis in Combat 18, Column 88 before that, groups attached to the BNP in the UK. Because of all those connections, Richard Malt's been an example. The O9A who were both involved in neo-Nazi groups, which is in line with insight roles going into extremist organizations. And of course, via doing that in the UK in the 70s, especially in the 80s and early 90s, you are going to come in contact with David Mayat. I mean, he had his own, NSM, the British National Socialist Movement, is one of the key figures in early Combat 18. He was one of the most influential writers within these different neo-Nazi movements. Hi, Jacob. Look, I'm not going to go into who the editor might be, because the editor, there is of course multiple editors over a period of time, but I'm just saying what my theory is, because nobody will fucking tell me outright what the exactly what's going on. That spoils the fun for everybody. They give me clues and then they just let me run with it, because they're anarchists. They don't care what I do with the information they've given me, which is immense. they see it as change from the current. They know that I am going to throw something in that will create traction and stop stagnation and decay in a sense. I'm not using sort of O9A terminology here. I'm just sort of going with my own view. They're keeping the O9. Oh yeah, Cosmic Reichsvolk. David Mayat really was heretical in the neo-Nazi movements, because he specifically. Oh, also Jacob Sockness. So I haven't contacted you recently. I've been violently ill. I've only just recently recovered. I wanted to test out a stream where a Q&A with just me, but I'm more than happy to do another Sockness stream in the future, just to let you know, because I have a lot of fun. Also, Jacob, I want you to be the biggest Republican figure in San Francisco. It has to happen. Anything that, because you're good at this shit, anything that distracts you from that, fuck them. Anyway, I'll go into that stuff with you later. Yeah, the Islamist and Reichsvolk stuff. There's a hilarious David Mayat piece called Why National Socialism Isn't Racist, and it has this picture of this black guy taken probably in the 1930s or something by the Nazis. And however, it is racist because the Jews, everything is fine. Hey, you Interzone, we don't care that you're not you're from one of the most hated fucking countries by the Nazis. You're European, pure blood is European. You're in no way going to be treated like Combat 18 treated you back in the day. However, everything is the Jews' fault. But to give Maya credit, fucking doing that, I'm amazed that nobody tried to kill him when he did that. From my perspective, the situation, much of the misinterpretation of identities is partially based on the fact that unsigned manuscripts in the same publications of Mayat's work were scrambled up. Absolutely. And there's so much stuff with Mayat's work, being him deliberately destroying shit and then people putting fragments of it together. It's a very complex situation. But yeah, what I will say though with and because I was trying to be normal this year, which was a hugely to my detriment. That's why I've barely been active on YouTube. I've barely been active on anything. Recently, though, I've been very sick for weeks. However, I was back in normie shit, and it just ended terribly. Not because of any of my work involved with Interzone, but because of very, very because they don't want people like me in certain areas. And so now I have a bit of time pushing forward a bit more. But back to how the O9A seem to operate, given the evidence I have, and this is only in the context of the O9A remnants that I can at least trace back to the 80s people. For instance, why that book and the concept of Asabia is relevant. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from all forms of al-Asabia, al-Jumaya. In a document, now, blah, 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 that's something else. Asabia, this is Maya, and then by proxy, people who like Mayat's work have incorporated it into O9A sort of mysticism. Asabia, or not so much mysticism, it's more different ways of looking at things. Asabia, this is Mayat's definition, is a loyalty to or feeling of kinship with and belonging to some group or grouping, distinguished as that grouping is by some criteria established by some person or idea or non-Islamic way. Yeah, Mayat is a very difficult person when it comes to his style. It's so prudent. Asabia is a dividing or division of people according to limits or boundaries or standards which are not Islamic. Why are they not Islamic? Because those limits, boundaries, or standards do not derive from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but instead belong to Jahiliyyah, the age of ignorance. In addition, Asabiyya demands or implies two things. First, obedience and loyalty to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and such loyalty, obedience is at best ignorance, and at worst setting up of some idea or ideal or way or loyalty or group to compete with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Second, Asabiyya demands or implying judgment others or ourselves by other. Oh, sorry, this is not the. Essentially, the concept of Asabiyya in the this is his Islamic Salafist sort of look, but Asabiyya is a similar system to a Ionic worldview, very similar to certain things Anton Long propagates, and also people like Aleister Crowley. And what's amazing is I never heard of this concept and this sort of cycle of 40 years or whatever of a group starting and then hitting its peak early and then declining and then something better replacing it, which is the closest thing I can say to a lot of what the older O9A involved individuals seem to see things as. That the O9A is something needs to come from the remnants, essentially the corpse of the actual O9A, and whatever it will be better. And Guru is, in my opinion, the best example of this, as this individual has not tried to manipulate me or turn me against different people or contacts or groups. They've done their own thing. It's the first time they've ever in any way, other than a few YouTube comments, communicated with me. They have had and that's why I love that Fruitful Youth video so much that's now gone, because it actually showed what the magic elements of the system is like in a subtle way that only people who know their shit will even understand what's going on. And I'm somebody who has not got into the mystical element as much because I can only do so much at once, and I have to focus on how it operates, what it is, and all these different conflicting elements. That's for my territory. But yeah, they operate in a way that's deeply personal and tailored to the individual. And it's not just O9A material, they will give you material on other things that that individual will like, and they do it in a kind of, I mean, it's very traditional, similar to AA and other occult groups, but very specifically personalized, far more than any other I've ever seen. Now, I have to make that statement again. I am not involved, but they operate this way, and that's the same way they've operated with me. Just I've been sort of fast tracked with certain information. But yeah, some of absolutely. Partially, the reason it's yet to be understood and decoded by those outsider of the concept and even by some insiders is simply because it's a rapidly evolving idea of hundreds of unique individuals. And that falls right in line with the concept of this, even though this is in almost every occult thing, of this cyclical, and also within like international relations, in realism, these cycles that of decline and then new ideas and peaking and coming forth and then declining and then this constant cycle, and it's a very cynical view too in many ways because the cycle is unending. If you understand how the cycle works, you then see how things operate, and then you can work within that cycle and invoke change in directions that are either personally beneficial, or if you're more like Maya, politically orientated. And yeah, and there has never been a outer representative or whatever of the O9A. There never should be. It is so tempting for me to piss off certain people and, as a joke, claim to be the official, approved, outer representative of the Order of Nine Angles. But of course, that's a absolutely dangerous joke for me to undertake, which is why I'm not. I find it funny because I am not somebody. Because I'm an outsider, it makes it even more absurd. But it is fascinating, and now that I have the time to focus, and I'm focusing on many different things at the same time, but how to handle the O9A has become something extremely difficult because of this waiting that all these different factions have, wondering what is he going to do next. Who is it going to benefit? And then there's people who legitimately have no interest in because I'm not an authority. I just am going to pass information on that checks out to the best of my ability as being accurate, and try and remove as much bias from it as possible. And I'm going to move forward with that. But yeah, And I'm having to fight against the most ridiculous narrative of the O9A, of this organization run by David Mayat himself to perform, things like the rape wolf and shit like that. Raping Aryan girls to impregnate them. Ridiculous kind of bullshit associated. And they've used Mayat to try and the O9A is a scapegoat used by the intelligence services to connect with every other decentralized extremist organization that is far right. The O9A is connected with the Atomov, and the O9A is connected with Combat 18. The O9A is connected with. They're using it as a means to bring all these other organizations into this one connection. So you drag the O9A through Parliament, you can now drag all of the associated. And because there's no centralized element, extremists in various factions of the O9A are involved in these other groups. That doesn't mean the other groups are O9A, but if they're influenced by O9A, that's not the fault of the O9A. It's a fucking nightmare. And that's what they're doing. And they use it. If you look on Wikipedia, they even try and claim David Mayat is the founder of pretty much every national socialist movement and paramilitary group to come out of the UK. You look at Wikipedia, he's the founder of Combat 18. The White Wolves, which never fucking existed. He's the founder. Anyway, I've got to go. I've been going for hours. I did not expect, people to have such interesting. No, that's wrong. I didn't expect as many people to jump on and make it so interesting. Yeah. Antelon gave her. Yeah. But it's even if somebody told Chloe, it would have been done as a joke. People would have found that funny. In fact, they directly refer to it as being a jape that they just let. Essentially, Chloe's probably an amoral opportunist who realized, Anton Long or whatever is no longer an O9A, and if we steal these fucking publications, these two books in particular, we'll be able to make some good money, especially if I claim to be. And the thing is nobody is essentially going to stop her initially because they thought that it could be a change in a direction that might be beneficial, and just to let it happen. Let her do it and see what what that leads to, because they have this very, very long cyclical and slightly anarchistic view, and the decentralized nature. Yeah. And Christos Beast. Exactly. That's why I'm so tempted to, and I'm not going to do it because I'll probably get arrested, but to claim that I'm the official outer representative, because it goes against every bit of essential how it operates. And And that's what I find funny about Martinet people who ask me what they should do with their Martinet books. When it's the whole point of is the individual being able to sort of do this journey on their own in a lot of ways. And yeah, I never bought these Martinet books that I have here. I've borrowed them, and as far as I'm concerned, whoever did buy these books, they did a service, because even though they gave money to the FBI, essentially, these books have been used to completely help deconstruct a well-known, but for some reason still under emphasized organization. So the money was well spent. Anyway, this has been fun. I've got to go. I'll get back to you, Guru, and also to you, Jacob. We'll work something out, but yeah, I'm exhausted. I need to get on with your things. But thank you all for watching, and I'm really grateful and happy and genuinely surprised that how many people, how detailed and great this discourse has been. As somebody who's in a weird time zone, that's completely I tried to set it up in a way where, because mostly American audience from what I know. Yeah, and thanks for doing this. Stumbled on your channel a few days ago and binged. Thank you. Yeah, so I actually am deeply appreciative of everybody. Nobody's been a dick. No, I'm really shocked. I just, yeah, I had an assumption that is actually disrespectful. It's just you don't know your audience until you do something like this. So yeah, thank you all, and I hope you enjoyed, and I appreciate everything, and I will be continuing my bizarre work, and I'll definitely be doing this again. Thank you. So yeah, talk to you soon.